I just want to kind of give a bigger perspective on the Energy Bridge project, as we've termed it in Mainstream. Just for people who don't know Mainstream, just a little bit of quick history in our business. People will know Airtricity from before, and Airtricity was sold 5 years ago. The North American assets were sold to the German utility E.ON for $800 million US, and the remaining assets, which were in Europe, mainly Ireland, UK and Germany, onshore and offshore, were sold to Scottish and Southern for 1.8 billion euros. And we started again 5 years ago, last January, so we're just over 5 years old. What have we done in 5 years? Probably a good figure to keep in people's heads, because we keep talking about gigawatts and megawatts. So 5 gigawatts or 5,000 megawatts, as Pat said earlier. That's the peak demand here in Ireland. So the coldest, miserablest day in the winter, 5 gigawatts is the max is produced here in Ireland. We have in Canada about a gigawatt pipeline, and we'll build our first project there this year. In the US, about 1.2 gigawatts, and we built our first project there with our friends from Goldwind and China Development Bank, and it went into service July of last year. Chile, it says 1.2 gigawatts there, but that's way out of date. We have about 3 gigawatts of mainly wind, but also big solar projects there, and we'll start the construction of 600 megawatts of plant there this year. That'll be a spend of nearly $2 billion US. In South Africa, we have a pipeline of nearly 5 gigawatts. Our first 3 projects there are being constructed at the moment. We have a spend there of just under 400 million euros on the projects. We're the biggest player in South Africa now. We've 18% of the market there, and nobody else near us. And then my own business day to day, our offshore business, we have about 6.5 gigawatts in UK waters and 1.2 gigawatts in German waters. So it makes us the biggest independent developer of offshore wind on the planet. We founded the business on one main pillar, one belief, or mission, or vision, if you want to put it that way. The world is on a once-off transition from fossil fuels to sustainability, and Mainstream exists to be a leader of that transition. I suppose maybe for the international brigade here, who are learning a bit more about Offaly and the region from coming here last night, and I think Pat's presentation and John's presentation really give a big flavour of the energy history here. And it's not just history, it's what's happening here at the moment. But what might surprise people is that a son of Offaly is leading the world. President Barack Obama, great-great-great-great-grandfather, I think, is from Moneygall in the south of the county here. And if you don't believe me, you'll see it on Google. But I'd like to quote a son of Offaly, because I think this is a very, very powerful statement for our industry. At the second inauguration address, President Obama made a very clear statement about energy policy and renewables. And I'd like to read all of it, because I think it's a very, very powerful statement. We, the people, still believe that our obligations as Americans are not just to ourselves, but to all posterity. We will respond to the threat of climate change knowing that the failure to do so would betray our children and future generations. Some may still deny the overwhelming judgment of science, but none can avoid the devastating impact of raging fires, crippling drought, and more powerful storms. The path towards sustainable energy sources will be long and sometimes difficult, but America cannot resist this transformation. We must lead it. We cannot cede to other nations the technology that will power new jobs and new industries. We must claim its promise. This is how we will maintain our economic vitality and our national treasure, our forests and waterways, our croplands and snow-capped peaks. This is how we will preserve our planet, commanded to our care by God. That's what will lend meaning to the creed our fathers once declared. So this is an economic necessity for the US, the biggest economy in the world. It was the only reference to any industry and economic growth that Obama made in his inauguration. So if America sees the potential, I think we should see the potential for Offaly in the Midlands here. And as I say, a direct quote from a son of Offaly. I'm not going to go into the detail of this slide, because I think everybody knows at this stage. You can look at the figures yourself, but just to say, We have a more than enough wind in this country to meet our own targets, which are quite big by anybody's standards. The target in Ireland is 40% of power generation from renewables by 2020. We have 2 gigawatts installed. We need to hit 4 gigawatts. That's no problem. What we will export to the UK will not hinder our targets here in Ireland one bit. The UK has the opposite problem. It's not building out enough wind. It's focusing on onshore, and I run an offshore business, It's much more expensive. It's been difficult to finance. There are challenges there in the UK in that. Onshore wind is competitive and economic. So in the past, we talked in Ireland about England's difficulty was Ireland's opportunity. I'd like to kind of turn that on its head a bit and say mutual difficulties present mutual opportunities. Nobody needs reminding of the economic crisis we have here in Ireland. Unemployment in the Midlands is 3% above the national average. There's a huge opportunity here in the time of economic crisis in Ireland to attract investment, create jobs, huge export industry. We can match agriculture for export in the next 5 years if we get this right. And the government needs money. You know, it's our roads, our schools, our infrastructure that we're not spending on now. So there's all the knock-on effects of this for the broader economy and broader society here. As we've all talked about earlier, the UK needs renewables in terms of meeting its climate change targets that are legal obligations from the EU and within UK legislation itself. And it needs energy. It needs the power. It's not just about climate change. So as I said earlier, the pink areas are what's being developed in Ireland. And, you know, John said it as well. There are 2 gigawatts in Ireland. So it's not that we're not doing onshore wind at scale here in Ireland. We certainly are. Mainly focused in Donegal, North Mayo, and Kerry and Cork. But virtually nothing in the Midlands area here. And Gate 3 is what will bring us to our 4 gigawatt target for 2020 and 40% of renewables in Ireland. That's oversubscribed by 6 gigawatts. So just to emphasize, we have more than enough to meet our own needs. Our challenge with meeting our own needs is make sure we have the grid in place that can get this all on the system. It's not about getting the wind turbines there. So we have this significant export opportunity, and we have this opportunity in the Midlands where really the penetration of wind and the development of wind is relatively small compared to Donegal and Kerry. Mainstream's proposal is to develop initially a phase of 1.2 gigawatts, so similar in scale to Bornamona's planned first phase. We've secured enough land rights already to do about 1.2 gigawatts, and by the end of the summer it'll be close to 1.6, because some of this will fall away during the planning process for good legitimate reasons. We will do 2 hubs, 600 megawatt hub, a 600 megawatt hub, and then we will take the power, the 1.2 gigawatts or 1200 megawatts, through an underground cable to the coast. Then we will take it from the coast to the UK. We've already secured 5 gigawatts of interconnection agreements. We have some history in this. I have 4.45 gigawatts of interconnection agreements for my offshore business over here on the east coast of the UK. Some of those agreements are in place 2-3 years at this stage, and we'll start building out in the next couple of years on those projects. So we've taken 5 gigawatts now on the west coast here, and our plan is to deliver the first 1.2 gigawatt phase into the UK market in 2017-2018 to line up with the energy crisis that is developing in the UK. So follow the money, which I think will be interesting. John, put an emphasis on these projects have to be commercial, and commercial they certainly will be. We will see over the network to the UK 1 billion euros of exports per annum. The cost of doing 5 gigawatts onshore, I said earlier, it's about an investment of about 7.5 billion sterling, or billion euros. That's what will go directly into the supply chain to deliver this. That's going to be the capital expenditure. If that was to be combined with the offshore projects here in Ireland, that investment when the offshore projects come on, if it was 50% onshore, 50% offshore, but there's enough to do it all from onshore, would bring it up to closer to 14 billion. So as we roll out the 4 or 5 gigawatts of onshore, there are billions and billions more for offshore to be developed and fed into the UK. The transmission facility on top of that will be further investment of about 6 billion. So we're talking of the order of 15 to 20 billion between the generation and the transmission projects. Our figures would say we'll generate 12.5 billion in tax revenues for the state, and the initial 1.4 billion of this by 2020. And this will come in the form of employment taxes, there'll be private land incomes, taxes on power generation, and VAT on materials and services. Into the local economy, 900 million in rates over the lifetime of the wind parks, 8.4 million directly into the economy here per phase, and we're saying phases of the order of 1 gigawatt and taking us up to 5 gigawatts. Significant benefits, I think, in terms of the economy and the long-term economic benefit here for community in the Midlands. There's a lot of talk about jobs, and you can take any number from any number of speakers who've been at conferences, and you'll hear from 0 to a gazillion, and it's neither of those. And I don't make a habit of giving numbers for this because it's hard to put an exact figure on it. It is thousands, and if we get it right, it's tens of thousands. Just to take some other people's figures, the Irish Wind Energy Association says per megawatt installed in Ireland, we get about 1.5 man-years of jobs. The European Wind Energy says if you're at best practice and really get manufacturing and the long-term O&M and services established here, you get about 15.1 jobs per megawatt installed. So you can see we're underperforming according to the two wind energy associations by 10 times. We could get 10 times as many jobs according to the wind energy associations. So at the lower end, we're saying 7,500 man-years if we had 5 gigawatts. At the upper end, we're saying 75,000 man-years if we had 5 gigawatts. I kind of pick a figure from the Ernst & Young report. It's a report done about 3 or 4 years ago now, and essentially looking at the Spanish experience, which would be number 2 after Germany in terms of installed capacity in terms of wind in Europe. And it says 8 man-years. So, it's kind of near the upper end of these estimates. So with 8 man-years per megawatt, we could get 40,000 man-years of employment. And the ongoing employment will be from more gigawatts here in the Midlands, offshore, and then as the industry establishes it here, it'll become a huge export opportunity, and I think we'll see that from panellists as we go forward through today. So a huge opportunity for the Midlands. We're going to have a huge opportunity today to debate it further with people who are from the international and the local Irish supply chain. And again, I'd really encourage as much questions and as much pointed questions, and ask the tough questions, because we have a lot of good people here today. I think we've 28 exhibitors. We've some of the biggest players on the planet. The 2 big Chinese manufacturers, Goldwind and XEMC, are here. The big turbine manufacturers, Siemens, GE, Nordex, are here. The cable manufacturers, Prysmian and Nexans, will be leading on the planet in terms of cable manufacturing. And then some of the big local players that are national names here in Ireland as well. So I'd encourage the interaction with them. So let's have a great day and a very open day, and thank you very much.